to get your feedback on how it's worked so far, how you've experienced IGO over the last year, and also to get your ideas going forward. We have a number of different projects planned for the future, some quite interesting and exciting ones. But of course, we want to make sure you are involved and able to share your experiences and collaborate on everything. So that'll be really the key aspect of this meeting, is exchanging on everything. So rather than waste too much time with introductions, I will move to the quick presentation. As I said, a quick overview. And all I will ask is that you all prepare yourselves to input into the conversation. Really dying to hear your feedback, your ideas, your perspectives, your suggestions in the discussion. So do take note and prepare to put up your hands and join the conversation. So with that, just bear with me one moment while I share my screen. Okay, so what are we going to do today? First of all, I want to give you a quick overview of the last year, primarily in what we've achieved, the projects we've started, what we've planned to do. Of course, I want to talk about the lessons learned. This is the key factor in shaping our way forwards. There's been an awful lot of lessons learned, as you can imagine, with this type of project. We also have some very interesting new projects. And then, of course, number 4, the experience sharing. That's going to be our big discussion to get your feedback. So, to begin with, the year 1 in review. It really is a bit of a celebration that we've gotten so far in 1 year. And the first thing to show you really is a few little figures that might be of interest. I think at this stage, all of you are well acquainted with this little diagram that we often show in all of our workshops and meetings. But this time, rather than talking about IGO and the tools, I want to talk about what we've achieved with these tools. The first one is our SME Support Center, which is our famous database of all of the, let's say, SME resource efficiency knowledge and tools and guidance. Here we now have over 1,000 SME focused resources. And again, always to stress, these are SME focused resources. This is not a research paper. This is not a policy recommendation report. This is only knowledge, support, etc., that would be relevant for an SME. When it comes to the IGO Assistant, we have so far had over 600 assessments from over 50 countries. And this is actually a low figure, you could say, for a year, but it's actually not a bad figure considering we didn't really target SMEs too much in the last year. We actually were targeting more the intermediaries, the portals to the SMEs. So for a year 1 where we didn't focus too much on SMEs, it's actually not a bad result for the IGO Assistant, and we've had a lot of learnings from it. We've also now got the IGO Assistant available in 6 languages, and our 6th language was Georgian, which was just launched last week in collaboration with the Energy Efficiency Center in Georgia. When it comes to our IGO network, we have now over 60 official knowledge partners and IGO network members. That being said, we have a much bigger network of, we could say, informal network people or stakeholders, where I can safely say we're into the hundreds nearly of organizations that we've been engaging with through IGO. And we have, for the new tool, the Implementation Manager tool, which we've always spoken about in the future tense, we have now officially started the very early stage development of a prototype for this tool. Much more on that to come later as well. And of course, that is in collaboration with the Ukrainian Cleaner Production Center, and it's supported by the EU, the EU for Environment program. So lots of interesting things around, let's say, these figures. We've been holding a lot of workshops as well. We, of course, had our regional and national workshops to launch IGO, the IGO Assistant. These were the ones we held at the beginning of last year in Africa, in Latin America, and the Caribbean, and in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. We also had some very interesting meet and greet sessions. These were much smaller sessions, very dedicated for IGO network members. These were very, very beneficial to us last year to get insights from the different network members. We also, towards the end of the year, started to deliver IGO training workshops for SMEs. And we did this through, let's say, our IGO network members in Pacific countries that had a network of SMEs that they wanted to introduce to the IGO assistant. And this is something we became quite active in towards the end of last year and obviously early this year. So you can see how we kind of were primarily focused on really developing our general network of organizations. And from that, we then progressively moved into engaging more with SMEs and training on them. But that's been very much towards the end of the first year. And we also had a very successful accelerator session at the World Circular Economy Forum at the end of last year, which was really all about how to focus on developing locally led solutions to, as you can see here, accelerate circularity within businesses. And this was quite important because it was also linked with a new EU-funded project that we'll be taking on this year, and much more to come on that as well. Now, aside from the kind of classic stuff that we had always spoken to you about, we also were getting engaged in a number of different projects. And very quickly, what these are is we have started with UNIDO, but also UNEP, the Cleaner Production Center in South Africa, to develop what we call greening the mining supply chain. What is this? This is how we can work with a large mining company to help them make their supply chain, the SMEs in their supply chain, go towards resource efficiency measures. This is at very, very early stages, but also looking like a very interesting project. How we can engage directly with a Pacific supply chain. Related to that, we are in the process of setting up an industry engagement working group with the Go for SDGs initiative. This is a working group that is focused on working with large corporates and their supply chains. How can we help the corporates, help the SMEs in their supply chains become more resource efficient? Very interesting project, really just getting started, all focused on how to develop a business case for resource efficiency. And of course, we also have a very nice project called IGO for Islands. This is in collaboration with a Global Environment Fund project, a GEF project that we as GGKP are working on. And what we're going to be doing there is working with business associations in 33 island nations in the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Indian and Pacific regions to help businesses become more resource efficient and in particular improve chemicals and waste management. But that is a very exciting type project because it's really getting down to specifics with a set number of companies in these island nations. And there is also a really interesting project taking place in Kenya. This is under Go for SDGs. We have David here who's leading that project as well. And this is really how to take a very practical and pragmatic approach to financing sustainability through a supply chain approach. I think I might get David to say a few words about this later on in our discussion, but it's a quite innovative approach on getting financing to SMEs through a business case approach. So they're the kind of ongoing projects that started in year one. Now, what we should talk about at this stage is our lessons learned, because whilst all those facts and figures and projects might look quite interesting, of course, they've also been a steep learning curve. I suppose the title here of this slide is important because it really is a reality check. Of course, we didn't go into this too naive, but everything has been a learning experience. And one of the key things that comes out of the IGO initiative, these simple words, too small, too big. On one hand, our team, our initiative is very small, which makes it very difficult to conquer the world. And that is kind of crucial because we need to be big to actually have impact as well. So we're kind of in a catch-22 stage. The world is too big, we're too small, we're trying so much, with so little people. That has obviously been complicated for us to try to be everywhere with big impact. Now, that being said, we did know that was always going to be complicated. And so going out there in 3 regions, trying to get IGO assistance used by SMEs all over the world was always going to be an extraordinary challenge. But trying to do that has actually taught us a lot of how to go about it better in the future. So of course, it's a big issue, but an important learning curve. We've also, because when you think about it, IGO is all about getting the right information, the right resources, the right supports to SMEs that need it the most. One thing that we've discovered, there are a lot of different SME-related resources out there. There's a whole range of technical guides covering all different types of resource efficiency topics. There's all different types of tools. You have financing solutions, you have training, you have it all. And yet the problem is they're available globally, but for one given country, we never have the right, let's say, suite of resources. That means the right technical guides and the right language adapted to that particular sector or even just country. This is our big challenge that we have come across. There's a lot out there, but we never have the full package in the right language adapted to specific sectors. So this will be definitely a challenge going forward. The IGO Assistant as a tool is proving quite successful, but of course, it is in its first phase. And one of the things that's coming out of it is that it's still on the generic side. We're giving recommendations, we're giving guidance to specific resources, but what's missing really is a crucial type business case, a story to convince the SMEs. What are the benefits for me? What are the costs for me based on my sector, my situation? And this is definitely something that we have to bring into the IGO Assistant as well. The other one is local champions. If we want to adapt IGO for a specific country, which is really a key objective, we need to have a local champion. There needs to be someone, an organization in that country that will take a certain responsibility in getting IGO translated, in engaging with local stakeholders, etc. So we have seen that there's little point trying to push IGO in a given country unless we have somebody locally who's really willing to get supported and get involved. It won't work without a business case. This comes back to the other projects I mentioned on supply chain initiative. IGO Assistant and all of the IGO tools are essentially useless unless we can create a business case for resource efficiency. I will make money out of resource efficiency. IGO will help me find what I need. It's not a case of IGO will help me, it's I need the business case first, that's for sure. And in relation to all of you here today, this idea of our IGO network and engaging with all of you, the last year we've been doing a lot of, we could say, bilateral engagement, reaching out individually or in very small groups to the IGO network and all the different organizations. Going forward, we need to come up with a better system to have more, let's say, cross-organizational exchange. How can we bring large groups of organizations together, collaborating, exchanging without too much effort? We did create an IGO group on the Green Forum. Hopefully, most of you will have got some idea what the Green Forum is at this stage. It's in principle, a great way to support engagement, but it has one weakness in that it doesn't have an app. And we have seen that without an app where you have this kind of instant possibility of instant exchange, it's very hard to keep the kind of a dynamic exchange going on in a group. So for sure, we need a kind of a better system for really effective exchange within a large network of organizations, in particular because we're all in different countries and regions. So again, we've been very good bilaterally, but now we need to get onto a bigger stage. Now, new projects, what's coming up to address all of this? This is probably quite important to talk about. One of the key ones that we didn't expect to be talking about today, but in fact, circumstances have changed a little bit, and we are going to be developing another tool. And this is the IGO Implementation Manager, which you might remember from our wonderful 3 steps, is kind of step number 3. IGO Assistant is all about building awareness, matching SMEs with existing information and supports. The Implementation Manager is to accompany an SME on their resource efficiency project. It's to help them do a feasibility study. It's to help them track performance of their projects. And let me show you very, very quickly in steps what this means. What we will see happening is that this tool will offer 2 options. It will either enable an SME to do an operational self-assessment, not the self-assessment of the IGO Assistant, but one that where you see how much energy you're using in kilowatt hours, how many liters of water, etc., etc. Or it will help an expert actually carry out an audit and record the information from an on-site audit. With this type of manual input, which is really about how much resources I'm consuming, what the cost is, what type of technology I have, we'll be able to do an automated feasibility study, i.e., this is what I'm using, this is what I could be saving, this is the type of technology I could implement. Importantly, there'll be a lot of automatic input that will help that feasibility study. For example, we take into account climate data. We take into account the cost of, let's say, electricity or gas or fuel in that country if the person inputting the information doesn't know it, if there's a grant available to reduce the cost of technology, etc. Then, obviously, with this automated feasibility study, we'll offer benchmarking so that if they're given a result that says we recommend that you do LED lighting, energy efficiency motors, water saving taps, you'll be able to compare these suggested solutions with your peers. How much have they saved if they implemented this measure, etc., etc. So very concrete information. Depending on what the different SMEs choose to actually implement, we'll provide them with the relevant guidance to implement those actions. Again, LED lighting, here's the LED lighting installation guide, here's the LED lighting monitoring guide, etc. And we'll offer them the opportunity to monitor their performance, i.e., this is how much energy I used before my LED lighting, this is how much energy I used after I installed my LED lighting, and to track that performance. Now, what that does, obviously, it creates a nice little continuous improvement approach for the SMEs, and that every time they implement an action, they can track the performance, they can carry out new feasibility studies, and it goes around. And of course, it provides the opportunity for that SME to have the information for any type of external reporting, whether it's reporting to their client, whether it's reporting to get certification, whether it's reporting to get a loan, whether it's reporting for a program. That is a really important, we could call it, side benefit. So they get a tool to help them, but they also produce the information that will help them in relation to a whole range of stuff. And this is happening this year. Thankfully, thanks to Andriy from the Ukrainian Cleaner Production Center, who is just about to start on a kind of a concept for this tool. Again, we're at very early stages and a simple prototype. This has been supported with the EU for Environment program. So within the next few months, we'll actually have a lot more information on the future of this tool. And I think this is an important one because we often get this, great, the IGO assistant gives me nice guides, but what do I do next? How do I get the facts and the figures and really actually implement my actions? So there's a big need for this type of tool. Now, the other big news is GGKP, which is the big organization under which IGO is managed. We are going to be funded from about mid this year on through a new EU Circular Economy project. It's a big project being implemented by GGKP, but also PAGE and the Global the Green Economy Coalition. And our part in this project is all about knowledge, so that we're going to be supporting this. To give you an idea what this project is about, here's the fancy language, but basically it's doing what we do currently and doing it better. And it's giving us the ability to expand the work we're doing in terms of engaging with the likes of your organizations, engaging with end users like the SMEs, but also bringing it up to a policy level. So we're being empowered to do a lot more and a lot more effectively from mid this year onwards. And just to give you an idea, it's really about working with those that produce the knowledge, working with those that, let's say, develop policy, but also provide financing, and of course, the end users of all of this. So that is going to be a very interesting project, which will drive a lot of what we've been doing with IGO on a bigger scale going forward. And of course, there's general expansion of IGO coming up. We'll be moving into Asia. There's a hopeful collaboration with Switch Asia, which is an EU program, and Go for SDGs. We will be hopefully adapting the IGO assistant for the MENA region in collaboration with a very interesting new organization. I will give you all the details on that in the coming weeks when we can confirm that, but there's quite an interesting project coming up there that will dramatically expand the IGO assistant abilities in that region. And we'll be establishing an IGO network in Kyrgyzstan. My colleague Medina is here today, and we'll be doing that in collaboration as also with Go for SDGs in the country starting roughly in May. So there's a lot of general expansion also planned for this year. So once again, we're creating a very, very busy schedule for all of us going forward. Now, that has been me speaking a lot, trying to get the year's experience out in one burst. And at this stage, I want to stop talking and start a little bit of a discussion with all of you. Now, I've just thrown up here on the screen some kind of key points that would be great to get your feedback on. Of course, we'd also like to get your feedback on your general experience with IGO to date. There's a number of people here today that are involved one way or the other with IGO projects. We might get the chance to hear from them as well. But I'm just going to leave these few bullet points on the screen for the moment. But the idea is now to hand over to the floor to see who might like to put up their hand and give us a little bit of feedback, either on what you've just seen there, or what you could give us in terms of lessons learned, or your ideas for the future. And the last thing I want to mention is, and we had mentioned this in the agenda that we had shared with you, we have an idea to maybe potentially develop a podcast going forward, primarily under this EU Circular Economy project. And the idea would be is, how effective would a podcast be, a global English language podcast, be in helping to make resource efficiency and circular economy a more interesting topic for a much bigger audience, all connected with practicalities. So in relation to industry, SMEs, and the stakeholders connected to them. So we don't have to jump into that straight away, but I would like you to keep it in mind as it's a topic we really want to get a bit of feedback on, because it's going to take a long time to prepare and put in place. So any kind of early feedback on that would be great. So maybe what I can do is literally stop talking and see if anybody has a hand that they would like to raise. Now, I have my eye on many of you that I can point a finger at. So please feel free to volunteer before I point the finger, because I have a list of names I could call up. So if you want to speak, now is your moment. Arab, many thanks for the first hands.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hannes. Great to hear what you have been doing in 1 year. My question is mainly related to what you started with when you said too small, too big, which means we are too small to face all these challenges, and you have to work in partnership and so on. So firstly, we'll be more than keen to collaborate with you, because we're working on SMEs, and we have to find mechanism on where we can articulate better our respective expertise in order to create an impact, because you have to be many to create an impact. But my second one is a question to you. Too small, too big, but at the end you said, we are expanding, we're going to Asia, we're going to there, and you are only 1 year old. I mean, I go. Aren't you spreading too thin too quickly? Because if you go so far, unless you enlarge your team, you might be going even against your statement of too small, too big, because you become even smaller because you're expanding it farther. So I'm just wondering if you believe that you have really good, solid foundation after just 1 year to spread thin so far.
Arab, you ask a very good question to start this off, because, and I think you've picked me up on a nearly yes, quite frankly, it is in a way spreading ourselves too thin. Yet what we intend to do is, when we expand into Asia, it's less to be very present. It is more, for example, I think I need to give a bit of background here. And you know this background probably very well, but the others not. Switch Asia is an EU program that has been active for many number of years. And Arab, in fact, was heavily involved with Switch Asia in the past. He knows it better than anybody. But it's actually going into a new phase. So the next, let's say, phase of the program is starting this year. And there's a very interesting opportunity for us to be I won't say connected to that project, but collaborate with that program from the very beginning. That means simply using the existing IGO Assistant tool as part of Switch Asia, let's say, promotion in the area going forward. It's also a way for us to collect even more resources that we can add to our database, and also slowly but surely extend our network. So it is spreading ourselves thin, but without putting too much effort into it. We're not trying to be very present in the region straight away. It's actually joining forces with somebody else to start the exploratory phase into the region. So it's tentative first step rather than a big deployment. And we won't be going into Asia with a big bang. It won't be huge, big launch workshops. It'll be slowly but surely exploratory phases. In the MENA region, this is actually going to be in collaboration with a development organization that's doing a project there. And in fact, it's more a case of us putting our infrastructure at the disposal of the development organization. And this is maybe an interesting point to make, is slowly but surely we're creating an infrastructure that can be used by anybody. And more we want to be able to do this. We want to say, here is the infrastructure, go ahead, use it for your purposes. This means we can expand without investing too much resources. So again, this is how we want to go forward in those two regions without committing ourselves too much or spreading ourselves too thin. And it's actually how we'll continue to progress in the existing 3 regions, is taking a more, how can we use intermediaries? How can we use local champions? How can we use our existing infrastructure to really have the bigger impact? But a very important question, and I'm glad you asked it so I can add a bit of clarification, because yeah, it's a huge challenge.
Okay, if you just allow me before somebody else comes in, for Switch Asia, I did manage the previous phase, but I will have an important role in the coming phase. So just for you to know. I will be very much interested to connect later on with you. I noted it here, with what you will be expanding on the islands for the Pacific. I will be in charge of doing the Pacific program of Switch Asia. So I will definitely come to you and see how we can work together. But for the other elements also, I'll be working on the coordinating between the different regional organizations that can support Switch Asia. So for this, we'll work together. For MENA region, we have Alessandro here with us. I believe you will be connected with what used to be called the SCP RAC, which has now another name, MedWave. But you also have, that could be of interesting for you for the whole MENA region also. You have Sedari, I don't know if you know them, otherwise I can connect you with them in Cairo.
Thank you, Arab. And in fact, it's great when you mention about the Pacific region, because these are conversations I had, very preliminary conversations with Alessandra, as you know. And we had previously discussed how could we help Switch Asia in the island, let's say, nation states, because through this Jeff project that we're working on, we have already very substantial foothold in the region through the project, and that would hopefully also be of use to Switch Asia. So yeah, glad that this meeting has already created a good connection, Arab. So thank you very much. Okay, then if I can hand the floor over to the rest of the audience. Again, as you can see, this is going to be a pragmatic discussion. So, but yes, let me jump straight to Andre.
Yeah, thanks, Hannes. And I'd like to start from congratulations to you and the team for these good results that you presented for 1 year. I think it's very impressive. And I'm really excited about number 600 of users of this RECP assistant, iGo assistant, I mean, because yeah, it's maybe small for whole the world, but I understand it's really SMEs that use it. So I think this number is quite impressive. And maybe it should be also somehow channeled to wide audience. And what I also think about this, like, that SMEs like success stories, like examples. So maybe out of this 600, you can find some companies who could be kind of success story. So it's maybe time to contact some of them and think why they use it. So had some feedback from them, from users, because also 1 year is like a period for testing the tool and understand if something works not correctly or they want to have something improved. So maybe it's time to have this survey of usability of users on usability, on if they like it or not, something like this. And also it's a great opportunity to promote the results and promote the tool. And after a year, for sure, all the products, all the tools, they should be constantly updated. So it's a great opportunity to have this, feedback and make it better. Also, I think you should have somebody in your team who will do this constant updating of the iGo assistant tool, because you need to add some materials, resources, maybe suppliers or service providers. And it's also could be done by some national counterparts. So we can do it voluntarily, because if we prepare some new material, we can submit it to you, but we need to remember it. So please remind us maybe once a quarter just to send our updates. So somebody of your team can upload to the assistant, for example. And yeah, what I wanted also to say, feedback from users, I think it's important, but also maybe communication and promotion of the tools that we have. And we have this, we have a lot of partners in different countries, and we can do lots of stuff. Just, resharing is free. So we can share the news, share maybe some new ideas. And I think it's going to be good practice to communicate to connect our communication people. Because, for example, as Cleaner Production Center, we are also interested in promotion some RECP scenes on global level, but also on country level, and we need some new. So if you have some good new developments, we can also share it for Ukrainian audience, translate it in our language, etc. And yeah, speaking about iGo assistant, we will submit the Ukrainian version of this text use soon. So it's some thoughts that I can share. I think the last one about communication, I think we need to do this, like to do some communication plan and maybe adjust our work of our people.
Thank you, Andre. And I think just the last thing you said there about a communication plan, I think this is also, when I mentioned the iGo network exchange, how to get this going en masse. One thing that has definitely come up over the last year is the interest to share between organizations, cleaner production centers, the NGOs, everybody across regions. And what would be interesting actually is to build on what Andre has just said there about how can we better communicate information between all of the different organizations that are now involved in the IGO initiative. And like I said, we did try this on the Green Forum, which works to a degree, but requires, it's not very instantaneous. You really have to make the effort to go in. It would be nice to hear from you how we could improve communication between the different organizations. There's a lot of stories to tell. I think there's a lot of different stories we can tell from the different projects underway and how we can share that across each other. So I don't know if anybody has an opinion on this or an insight on this, how we can get better at sharing between the organizations and how IGO could better facilitate this. Now, of course, we always have ideas, but we'd love to hear from you. If there's anybody there today that would like to put up the hand and give us maybe some insights on how we can do this communication a bit better. David, I see your hand up straight away.
Hi, thanks, Hannes. I want to also echo congratulations on the progress thus far. Sorry, the lights sort of, the sensor just went off. So, yeah, so I'm really excited about the progress. I am not raising my hand to answer the question of how to deal with the communications challenge. So I see Belinda's hand has gone up. I had some other comments. If Belinda want to talk about communications, so let's first go to her so we don't lose, and then I'll go through my thoughts on this quarterly meeting, if that's okay.
Perfect. Belinda, you have a great solution for us, I believe.
I don't have a solution. Hi, everybody. But maybe just a comment for consideration. There's a lot of platforms out there and a lot of engagement, and we think, okay, this is going to be a great platform to be on. So a person becomes inundated with what is out there. And it tends to be a lot of reading, like you need to go into a platform to go and see what is available. You have to go through the item and yes, it's applicable, it's not applicable, and it takes up a considerable amount of time. So I was quite happy when I saw your suggestion about a podcast, because we're all busy and multitasking is one of the things we always do. So a podcast is something you can listen to while you're driving between, appointments or site visits or whatever it may be. It really is a time saver, and it also helps you select what is appropriate to you immediately, like, yes, this is going to apply or it doesn't apply. And then just on communication side, from my point of view, I haven't seen a lot of communication come through from IGO personally myself. And I tend to be reactive to what is, first of mind, like what has come in for me to deal with today. And if I haven't heard from IGO for a month or a couple of weeks, I forget about you. So that's just my honest feedback. I'd like to be a lot more involved personally on this platform and to be able to make use of tools. So that's just my 50 cents worth.
Thank you very much, Belinda. And your comment about the podcast, and as well I see in the comment section also from Hector talking about the podcast. Great, because we're going to move on to that soon. And also, I really appreciate your honesty about the fact that you don't think you've been getting much communication from IGO. And I will confirm that, because we haven't had a systematic approach for really sharing information en masse to the IGO network members to date. We had played around with the Green Forum as a way to do it, discovered this probably wasn't the best format without an app to date. And that is why actually we wanted to have this quarterly meeting to start getting a few ideas on how we can best do this. Now, definitely the podcast is a very interesting idea that we want to discuss with you going forward. It is definitely one way to communicate. The other question to put on this is, we have the opportunity also to just create a monthly newsletter, but we don't want the monthly newsletter just to be about IGO. The idea is also how we can exchange information from different organizations, key things from different organizations across. So if we do a newsletter, it's also to see how we can get information from the different organizations that we can put in the newsletter to share with everybody. I see Lee has his hand up. I'll move to you, Lee, but maybe after Lee, I'll ask anybody who has a suggestion on how we can regularly share information. And if you agree that it should be mostly about key, let's say, updates or highlights from the organizations that we share with everybody. But while you reflect on that and prepare to raise your hand to offer your insight, I will move to Lee. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Hannes. So yeah, I think it's, I wanted to actually just hook on to what Belinda mentioned. Yeah, congratulations on the great work. I think for us, I think also thank you for last week. You know, this is one of the, you know, you presented at the colloquium of the NCPC South Africa that we did in partnership with the Africa Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production. And again, the intention there was actually to create a platform where we can share certain information, work, you know, talking around a specific topic, but also to share case studies, to share ideas, and to share, just give an update of, or allow for a platform for information to be shared with a broader stakeholder group. And so I think, you know, for us, we're trying to find more and more platforms and opportunities where we can share, you know, tools. One of a big focus for us, of course, as NCPCSA is to have as many tools developed that we can, you know, put out into industry to be used. So we're trying to find more and more ways for that message to get out. So I think, you know, that type of interaction, you know, that colloquium, that knowledge sharing type, you know, I'm just going to, you know, refer to it very broadly as knowledge sharing, but we've seen some value in those type of events that, you know, where we have it constantly. Again, to reiterate what Belinda mentioned, when you don't have a frequent messaging coming through, you sort of forget about what, you know, about IGO, about what it can do, and actually using it, just because people have become so used to following a certain process. And you know, I'm using us as an example. We have a very specific process that we follow to support industry and SMEs with RECP. Just this week, we started training of trainers of our specialists or experts on our new RECP training. And our skills development department, they've expanded it to actually include a number of new concepts like eco-industrial parks and circular economy, and you know, some adaptation concepts. So I think the way that you're moving in terms of the implementation, I do see, I think for us, it's starting to become quite clear how this tool can add value to what we are trying to create. But again, I didn't attend the training per se, but I don't think IGO was mentioned even in that training. So for me, typically, you know, in a platform like that where we have 30 experts who generally go into industry out every day, you know, they should have IGO at their fingertips on a daily basis. So yeah, I think, you know, what I'm trying to get to is, yeah, increasing the messaging. I'm still, I hear what you say about the newsletter, and yeah, great idea. I just for myself, I get quite a few newsletters. I've not gone through all of them as yet, but it's a lot of valuable information. But again, how do we package it in such a way that it's easily digestible and that it's easily shareable? Because again, sometimes you miss very specific things if you don't go through that meticulously. So yeah, just looking at some of those options would be great. But especially in the region, I work closely with RECP and some of the other NCPCs in the region. So I really would like to look at how we can use that platform. See, Nelson is also here in the call, which is great. So I'm also looking at how can we create more frequent engagements to share what's happening on IGO. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And I think this actually raises one point, is actually how one can you promote, I suppose, the work of IGO in all of your programs and make use of it. That is obviously of interest to us as well to hear from you. But I've seen another couple of hands pop up, and I just realized that I had promised to come back to David. So I should go to David as well at this stage. But I think this idea of communication, we'll keep it as a kind of a key point in this conversation. In about 5-10 minutes, I'm going to move on to the podcast. I really want to discuss this podcast in detail with you. And I know we have experience from Luis, who has his hand up as well on this. But if I may, I want to ask also one other small favor. And this is something you can do throughout the remaining 35 minutes, is also to know what we should include in this quarterly roundtable. Today is a bit of an ad hoc. It's a discussion, it's throwing out a lot of different ideas, it's getting general feedback. But going forward, we want to have a more consistent approach to this roundtable, adapted to you, the members, so to speak. So if you have specific ideas, for example, do you think we should use it as a place to promote key success stories, highlights from organizations, project results they've had, et cetera, or do you think it's a place that we should be having SMEs speak, whatever it may be? Throw it into the comment box, into the chat box. We'll collect those ideas for the next quarterly meeting. So we won't talk about the quarterly meeting as a discussion, but I'd like to get your ideas what we should include going forward. Also, should it be more than an hour and a half? Should it be longer, etc.? Throw it into the chat box. But with all of that said, back to David, who is anxiously waiting for his turn.
Way to set me up. So thank you so much, Hannes. And going back to my earlier, point is to congratulate you and the team, Tracy and everybody else, on sticking it through. Because I think, first of all, my first thought is that the beauty of IGO, as from day one we ever had this conversation, Hannes, is that it's an iterative process and it'll get better iteratively. So I think for me, the first sort of charge is that we need to carry on, because something and ideas will pop out of this that will be transformational. And so as you get more information, somewhere down the line, if we just hang in there, there will be a big turning point. There will be a big shifting of the needle. So I think for me, 1 year is a great success story. I see it more as like the first step to like many others. I have so many thoughts, but I want to just crystallize them into sort of two things. So as Hannes has mentioned, we have this, and we ideated it with Hannes, and it's his brainchild as much as anyone's. this ecosystem approach to seeing to funding or financing sustainability in SMEs and large value chains. I don't want to go too much into the project, but the idea is that we have two value chains we're working with in Kenya, one in tea, one in dairy. We've brought on board the Kenya National Cleaner Production Center, and they're working with these two value chains to identify SMEs within their value chains that have resource efficiency challenges. And then they go through and conduct audits and come up with recommendations. Then we also have a finance expert to be able to develop customized finance solutions, customized to the value chain, and also reassessing risk, so that risk is not a generic assessment. One of the first things that came out of this, and we just had a meeting actually today. The meeting I was in before this one was with what I call the Dream Team, Kenya National Cleaner Production Center, and the finance expert. I knew, Hannes, you were busy with this, so I didn't want to bog you down with that. But one of the first things that blew me away is a very simple thing. And don't quote me on this, but none of the value chains knew of Kenya National Cleaner Production Center, who have a wealth of experience working in both those sectors. So one of the things, and maybe it's a bad example in Kenya, but one of the first things that comes out is that simple things such as people knowing what's out there. And I think, Hannes, you say this all the time, is that there's a lot of information that people don't know about it. So these two value chains are first of all, very, very shocked that Kenya National Cleaner Production Center exists and that it's a resource. So one of the first things that I think when I look at IGO, Hannes, and I wanted to ask Andre and Lee, is from the NCPC perspective, are you or do you envision using IGO to conduct assessments? But also, more importantly, can IGO be a conduit to the NCPCs directly? So I don't know, Hannes, like if there could just be a simple connection to all the NCPCs, as in just like, I don't know, somehow, if it's not, and if it's there, apologies, but just first of all, making sure that they are linked, so that even information, and so that even centers can be able to help you in uploading. It's not just you sitting there uploading the resources and the case studies and all that. I think that's one thing. So just using it also by itself. Andrew, we will have reports soon, and we'll be able to see your comments. So, so using IGO as a by in and of itself, just a connection to NCPCs. That's one. Then as we grow it and it becomes more of a household, or should I say business hold entity or name, then people can be able to have that conduit. The second thing I want to say, and then I'll stop, is we've always said that we need to be the soldiers fighting to figure out how to develop business cases for sustainability, commercial viability. So many people can be able to get financing from not development, but from commercial banks. And that's one of the things we're trying to do in this pilot, is try to see which resource efficiency upgrades are commercially viable. Now, one of the things we are also charging ourselves with is, let's not just be too focused on financial viability, because that's sort of where sustainability ends up fighting with one hand tied behind its back. There's a lot of benefits that come from sustainability that are not necessarily financial. Some are indirectly financial. So for example, keeping track of the number of green jobs being created, that has a spillover effect. And that's financial, and tax base growing and things like that. But there's there's social benefits, there's environmental benefits. And if we can be able to start having a mindset where we start quantifying the other benefits, so that they can be used by the finance institutions as metrics of determining viability of projects. Because when it's just only about cold hard numbers of cash, that we lose out of weighting these other benefits. And so I think for me, one of the things that we could also throw into IGO, and it's already burdened as it is as we think about this business case, we start championing this thinking that it's not just about return on investment in terms of interest rates and paying off loans. It's also in terms of the other benefits, and also helping steer the conversation so that it's not soft. It's really hard, tangible co-benefits. Let's call them co-benefits to investing in sustainability. Then I think we will be able to outcompete the brown, if you will. And I think those are the two things I wanted to say. Then I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And I'm going to summarize in 2 seconds, because I think this actually, I'm going to use everything as an excuse to talk about a podcast, actually, because what you've kind of described there is we need to tell the story better. There is a lot of convincing people. And we have a challenge that why would a business do anything unless there's a business reason for it? And that's the logic one. And the classic one is they're required to do it to be able to sell their product. Okay, so I have to do it. The other one is that they actually say, okay, I myself think that I can improve my productivity or whatever it may be by doing these things. And it's two different approaches. One is where the business themselves sees the validity of resource efficiency, and the other is where it's essentially imposed upon them. Now, imposing resource efficiency on someone typically is a bit more effective because you just have to do it, and you can do it on math. Convincing them to do it from their own initiative is a little bit more difficult, but tends to have a better result because they're really doing it because they want to do it. So the two kind of approaches, maybe we could break it up into. But one is the story. How can we get that story out there better? And I think this is where the idea of the podcast could help a little bit. I'm not saying we reach loads of SMEs through this, but improving that storyline. The other one is you mentioned the NCPCs, the Cleaner Production Centers, and how to get them to work together. Of course, we do have the RECP network, which is the original network of all the Cleaner Production Centers. Branko has a lot of experience with this, having been the lead on this going forward in the past. Going forward, we definitely do want to support this as well. That definitely will actually probably be something we'd like to push under this new EU project. With a bit of luck, we'll have a few more resources that we can invest into something like that. So think of this from the kind of second half of this year. That's something we can explore a little bit better. How could we practically support a better reignition, I suppose, of the RECP network? Now, Alessandro, I know you want to say something. A lot of comments are coming in as well, which are very good. Let me do, again, I want to keep a little bit on track here. Everything is leading towards a wonderful podcast discussion, but I've also got a bit of information there from you on how we should communicate, the stories we should tell. I do want to keep in mind this idea of a newsletter, because going forward, we do want to communicate a bit further. In the chat, please let me know if you think a newsletter is a good idea or not, because there's a lot of controversy over newsletters. People aren't happy to have an influx of stuff into their inbox. There might be better ways. So please tell me in the chat if you think going forward we should have a newsletter, yes, no, and if not, what your other idea for a regular communication could be. Think simple, think clearly. We'd like to get the feedback. But let me move to Alessandro. If I may, you have something to add.
Thank you very much, Hannes, and congratulations on this first year of life of the IGO. I want actually to touch upon let's say communication needs and also more maybe networking oriented and impact oriented communication tools. As you know, in SwitchMed we have invested a lot on that, and actually it's 10 years we are combining, let's say, and coupling communication with action, network building, and also creation of local ecosystem in terms of different partnership in the countries and regionally in order to better position our contents. If I'm not wrong, I understand that there's quite an organic trend to shift from knowledge management to tailored quality service offer with Diego. And so I believe that this indeed require the use of more refined marketing tools as well. In this sense, of course, podcasts, newsletters, from my perspective, as you know, I'm also leading the networking and communication facility at SwitchMed. And from my perspective, indeed, all those elements are useful as long as they are part of an integral strategy and an organic strategy, of course, to increase the outreach of the tool and the strategy itself. And on the other side, as said before, I think that localizing, let's say, this process could also be very helpful. So localizing knowledge building, localizing, let's say, this service offer using a partnership approach at national or local level could also help, let's say, building, let's say, the next phase of the IGO. I think that it's a big step and a great difference. Let's say, see that the IGO implementation manager is actually functioning as a quasi, let's say, decision support system and can offer further and more advanced insight, let's say, on the way that SMEs can build their work on sustainability. So I think that, I mean, again, you have been doing a great work to define structure and storing all this knowledge. Now it's time to not only disseminate, but also to, again, have a clear identification of how, let's say, target group can be engaged and respond to this great offer. From on our side, as you know, we have our own competing, I'm kidding, actually, tool, which is the switchers.org platform. We have been facing the very same, let's say, difficulties because we had built a very huge user base. At the moment, we have more than 5,000 small enterprises and entrepreneurs who actually signed on the platform. We had a huge, let's say, outreach and attractive potential because of this ecosystem approach we have been building in countries, etc., etc. But indeed, it's very difficult now to find who and how, let's say, business models has really benefited from the services they had access to. Also, the thing that the Switches.org has been built as a virtual ecosystem in which there are not only, let's say, SMEs or entrepreneurs that are accessing, but also, let's say, business support organization, trainers and experts, is more attractive, let's say, again, for the external dimension. This is why we had a lot of involvement and engagement, but now we are exactly facing the same issue, meaning that how, let's say, because of course we are in the essence a cleaner production center as well. Medwest is the SCP, UNEMAP SCP Regional Activity Center with a clear policy mandate. So bridging now this private support we have been delivering with our policy mandate, of course, is becoming more compelling and indeed identify the way that that this tool can be scaled up in, of course, based on a meaningful objective and with clear impact control points and KPIs. It's of course needed if we want to reach out again to those parties that are essential to the functioning of the Barcelona Convention itself when it comes to SCP. So yeah, I think that again, to get back to the communication, I feel that really everything can work if it is encompassed in a wider and more organic strategy. And again, I think that marketing tools needs to be also harnessed in this strategy, because now we are moving toward a different scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Some very, very interesting comments there. First, I would say yours is not a competing tool. Yours is a tool we would direct SMEs to. I think what's actually worth mentioning, the SwitchMed tool is really a very, very strong tool. And in a way, I think IGO is a matchmaker. We match to these existing tools. So always keeping this in mind. The other thing as well, what I would say is, Alessandro, I think you've reached a point that we anticipate, and one that is very important for us is we can get companies to a certain stage, but then what next? There is this as well, like, you know, you get so many interested, or you get so many to a certain level, and they don't know how to go further. This is why we have started to have a strong focus on supply chain initiatives. How can we now work with larger companies and create supply chain initiatives? Think of this. If we have a company that has a supply chain in one of SwitchMed's countries, ideally we would say, well, as it so happens, SwitchMed has a very good network of SMEs that are already well accustomed to the whole approach on RECP, et cetera. These would actually, and if some of these are your suppliers, did you know they're ready to go? And then you have the logical next step where the larger company starts a pilot project with those SMEs. You know, there's an incentive, you comply with this criteria, you get a better contract, et cetera. And for me, that would be a very, very important next step, because we're very limited on what we can do. Us, the organizations here, we have limited impact on these companies. We can only go so far with so many. We need to really create the market, the driving force. And the larger companies are willing to incentivize. And where we can act as the connector there. So I would say it would be very interesting to consider your countries, your networks in that supply chain initiative. Again, very early stages, just kickstarting, but that is the objective in this as well. We have a bunch of other people wanting to speak. Giovanna is keen with her hand up, and after Giovanna, we'll move to Luis, because Luis has experience with a podcast, a very good podcast in Spanish. And so if Giovanna, can I let you go, and then we'll move to Luis, and that'll be our entry into podcast discussion.
Okay, thank you, Hans. Guys, good morning here in Brazil, good afternoon in the other countries. Hans, congratulations. We are very happy with the information about the iGo initiative and application, the iGo assistant projects, and so on. First, I talk about the feedback in Latin America. And after I talk about the initiative at the UFSCar using iGo Assist. First, we have some difficulties for the monitoring the application, the IGO assistant in Latin America, in Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, and Costa Rica, because we today we don't contact with this organization. We don't know if the small and medium companies applying the IGO assistant. We see in the Green Industry platform that the organization don't know a little of comments, a little information. I don't see the networking in the Green Industry platform. Besides, the information in the Green platform is a lot of in English, and we think it's necessary publish in other languages, for example, Portuguese and Spanish, because we have work with small and medium companies. In some people in these companies, I don't know, for example, I don't know speak or read in English and other language. We have very important, maybe publish the information in this language. Some solution for this is the publish this information in other language. Maybe organize again workshops, national and regional in Latin America, for to contact again with organization, and maybe contact the small and medium companies directly, because maybe in this way we can apply better the IGO system and monitoring the process in these companies. Other solution maybe send email for the partners in the first step in the IGO initiative to know if they apply the IGO assistant, and we have the feedback about this. Maybe I remember that I sent to the organization and small and medium companies the survey. Maybe it's good see the evaluation, see the answer to know the main difficulties, the main ideas, the main goals to improve. After I talk about the podcast, and the second point is related to the initiative at the UFSCar and the university, because we know it's very important work with the undergraduate student, because they is the future professionals, and introduce this tool, important tool, is very important for the formation and for the application in future in these companies to improve the efficiency of resources. If for this, me and Diogo are applying an undergraduate course as environmental, production, agronomic, and food engineering, and business administration. In different words. In these disciplines, the student first answer the questionnaire for the expectative to the tool, the IGO assistant. After to apply the IGO assistant in some small or medium company, the student answer the other questionnaire about the perspective. We have more than 80 answers about the two questionnaires, and the results is very positive about the IGO assistant. The student talk about the tool very easy to apply, for the companies. No is necessary specific knowledge about the tool, and it's very important for to help the small and medium companies, because they companies in the most of case, I don't have financial resources for implementation. But we have worry about the evaluate the tool into the iGo assistant, if is okay or not, because in some diagnostic the tool is in English and other language, and maybe it's difficult to the companies apply these guides or tool, etc. And maybe it's important in other step evaluate these tools if it's adequate or no, or evaluate the level, the maturity of the company for the applying this tool. The results we pretend publish in journal and send to you, Hannes. But I will very happy with this experience, and we try after apply in case real study, for example, in extension project and other projects, because we want a lot of apply and use iGo assistant. For the iGo assistant can be used for many companies. Thank you.
No, thank you, Giovanna. And you've hit on a really important point that we haven't talked about, but that is actually really crucial for the iGo assistant going forward, is we don't have the right resources in the right language. We're directing, as you said, to a lot of useful tools that are not usable by the companies because they're not in the right language. One thing, I think we might leave it until the next meeting, but definitely I would like to see how we can most effectively, easily, and cheaply translate our tools into more languages. And not our tools, into the tools that are out there and the technical guide, because we're getting this from every country that, it's great that you're pointing us to all of these resources, but they're not in our language, they're not really usable. So one of the things is, how can we get these translated? How can we get them adapted for the local context? We don't want to develop new stuff. We want to see how we can translate. This is a bigger topic, but I do think research institutes, universities can play a big role in this. I think they're very well placed to help us in adapting and translating these type of resources. So this is a big task, but definitely one that we have to work on sooner rather than later. So thank you, Giovanna. I'm really looking forward to the outcome of your project, because I think it's going to provide some very interesting information, and the analysis will definitely be useful for us on this going forward. Knowing that we literally have 10 minutes, and Vivian, I can see that you are already willing to support on some translations, which would be phenomenal. Thank you very much. We'll definitely be following up with you on this for sure. The key thing is, what should we translate? This is the big one, because we will have many different tools doing the same thing. Which one is the best one? This is one area, as well as the analysis of which one should we work on first. So a conversation definitely to have again. But back to the podcast, because like I said, we are planning for this EU project. Quite frankly, a lot more things will be possible under the EU project in the latter half of this year. Everything from communications to more workshops, to more, let's say, events, communication, engagement, outreach. We'll have more resources for this in the latter half of the year. And of course, the podcast is this. Luis, you have a very successful podcast in Spanish that has been running for quite a long time. And we're dying to hear about your experience with this. And if we're crazy, to try and do one in English. And if it's a good idea, how we can learn from you and collaborate with you and make it all work together in an amazing way.
Thank you, Hannes. Hello, everybody. I hope everything okay. and I'm from the Guatemala Cleaner Production Center. And since July of 2020, we launched a podcast, and it's called Circularity. And the idea is to share information about resource efficiency, cleaner production, and circular economy. And right now, we already have at least 4,500 plays in our podcast. It's only in Spanish. And we start like a tool to share information about the topics we try to work every day here in Guatemala. But the another idea of objective of this podcast, and this is I recommend that the green industry have a podcast, is a good tool to approach to the stakeholders, because the podcast help us to approach to our companies in Guatemala, the experts of the government and international cooperation, and private sector organization, universities, municipalities, that the podcast is a good tool to approach to this kind of stakeholders, to give us some space to talk about it, the topics that everybody works all day. And the podcast is, we started in the format of audio, only audio. And then in the last year, we start to produce material in video format in YouTube. So the podcast is already have almost 120 episodes or segments, and the listeners is in at least 35 countries. The 50% of the listeners is in Guatemala, and the rest is from the United States and Colombia, Spain, Germany, Costa Rica, Mexico, but it's almost 40 countries around the world. And the idea of the podcast is a simple tool. You can start like with a Spotify tool that is called Anchor, and it's free. We are started with try to use the free options in the market, and right now we buy some microphones to try to have some more technology to have a good material or quality of the audio of the and video. So I recommend this podcast, and right now our podcast is like a radio, no? It's a virtual radio, and we have already 6 programs like a radio. The circularity is the main, and we start to linkage this podcast with the municipality, or the municipality of Guatemala have a program, and try to share some initiative that they have already here in the city of Guatemala, and some companies or some partners in the private sector have their own program, like quality air and climate adaptation. You know, this is a good idea to have a simple tool to share information and to start to keep in touch with the audience and in the platform. So this is a good experience. And right now we think to launch a street media online platform, because the podcast is already offline. Yeah, we record all the material, and then we upload to the platforms. But I think that the experience in online or live is another experience, because you can keep in touch or have another kind of interaction with the people. So I hope that its idea motivate to everybody here to participate in this kind of platform, like a green industry in green industry. industry have a podcast in the future, please make contact with us, because for us it's a pleasure to collaborate with this kind of ideas and platforms. So it's in a short time, I hope to give you some good points or good ideas about our experience here in Guatemala. So you are the producer, the interviewer, because I am the producer, I am the interviewer, I am the person in charge about the podcast. It's only right now one person, but if you have some resource, we have some money, but it's probably to have a better tools, more people, more person to take share, taking in charge about this kind of the tool. So it's a good experience, and already we have the collaboration about our colleagues in Latin America, the Clean Up Production Center, like Miriam, for example, Miriam Orbea from Ecuador. We have the pleasure to interview her in the podcast. So it's a good experience. I hope you like this idea, and I hope to see the new podcasts of green industry in the short time. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis, for the inspiration. And I'm glad to hear that it's been a very good experience for you. I think this is the important part, that you found it a good experience. And I have to be honest with you, our idea of a podcast comes solely from your experience and the stories you've told us to date. So for sure, this is what inspired us on this idea as well. Like I mentioned, this is something we want to do as a key element of this EU project. A big part of this EU project is sharing information, reaching the audience, and we thought that the podcast could be a way to do it. Obviously, it's supporting the IGO approach, but making it also a bigger audience. So we definitely would see, if we do this, how to collaborate with you, Luis, and maybe if there's anybody else out there in a different language on a podcast, because the idea is how can we collaboratively reach a bigger audience, sharing the same stories, etc. Now, I know that we definitely did not leave enough time to chat properly about the idea of a podcast. We're actually already reached the limits of our workshop. What I will do, though, is steal 1 minute to see if anybody has a quick point to make on a podcast, if they've had an experience, or if they'd like maybe to be involved as we go forward on developing an idea for a podcast. It won't happen until the second half of this year, that's for sure. But if it's of interest to you to be involved in this, to have your input into it, do please let me know. You can raise your hand now. Lee is already wanting to be part of us. Good to see. If anybody else is interested, thumbs up right now, or you can touch base with us afterwards as well. Very good, very good, very good. We definitely didn't have enough time to speak about everything, but I did want this to be a bit of a general conversation. I see that it's also beneficial to have a general conversation. Definitely quite pragmatic is a very good idea. We're taking quite a lot from this, actually. Definitely on the communications, we're going to rethink this and come up with a more consistent plan. Also, I'm very glad to hear that there's interest, especially from Vivian, about the translation of the existing tools. This is something we definitely want to move forward on quite fast. That's going to be quite important. We will keep up to date on the new implementation manager tool. And I really would like to get ideas from you on how we should go forward on these quarterly roundtables. Today was a little bit ad hoc. It was very much discussional based, but you might think that there is more benefit to have this slightly longer or address specific topics. Do let us know. We have 3 months until the next one, but we definitely want to make it a stronger and more efficient way of communicating regularly on the project going forward. So, we're already 2 minutes over, so I'm not going to keep you much longer, but pass on your feedback. Let us know how things are going. Let us know your ideas for the next roundtable. And in the meantime, thank you very, very much for your input. It's been much appreciated. And as usual, looking forward to staying in touch. And we've taken everything into account that has been said here today.
Thank you, Hannes.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Deixa eu escrever aqui. Ai.